we've been doing. As you are aware, if you've been here, this is, it's one thing to read the Old Testament and think, okay, it's just history. It is. It's unique history because it's the history of it's God's interaction with the world. And some people call it his story. But we looked at Moses, and you remember Moses had a problem answering God's call. In fact, he came up with a whole bunch of excuses, and we see what happens when God calls you and says, this is where I want you to do, this is where I want you to be, and you decide to reject it. We also looked at Isaiah the first week, and Isaiah's response call was, "Hear my Lord, send me." And we learned that how that excitement, how enthusiasm applies to how our lives are. When God calls, ready to go, we get all excited about it. It changes how we interact and how our lives are affected. Well, today we're going to look at something very, very different. We're going to look at his book of Ezekiel. Now, we're not really in one specific section. We're going to really look at the whole book. I'm going to try to preach the entire book to you tonight. But we're going to look at some highlights of Ezekiel's life because I want you to understand that sometimes answering God's call is a hard thing. And so this sermon is actually entitled Answering the Hard Call. So I'm going to give you some background. Ezekiel is a prophet, and he is a prophet in Israel and Jerusalem at about the time of the Babylonian captivity. Now, he's a couple years before that because the captivity occurs about 2/3 of the way through Ezekiel. The entire nation is ransacked and destroyed. The temple is destroyed and pulled down. Jerusalem is burned to the ground. And he is called by God to proclaim the coming destruction with a promise that it's going to happen and that he's going to witness it and he's going to see it. And so Ezekiel occurs in that light. So I want you to understand Ezekiel is not a very positive person because he's coming. In fact, he knows that God never promises us. He's only looking for us to be faithful. And so in the first chapter of Ezekiel, you have this God, he comes and God comes to him in a vision. And he sees God descending from heaven and the angels and the seraphims and the seraphs and all this other stuff going on. And if you read through the book of Isaiah and read through Ezekiel 1, you'll see a magnificent vision of God interacting with the world and a picture of them in heaven. And Ezekiel is going to need that starting point because he's going to need that ability to draw on it when the things start happening in his world. And so God never promises success. He always wants us to just be faithful. So listen, God says in Ezekiel 2, verses 3 through 10, it says this, "And he said to me, I send you, son of man, to the children of Israel, two rebellious nations that have rebelled against me. They and their fathers have transgressed against me, even I, and the children are impudent and hard of heart. And I send you to them. You will say to them, Thus says the Lord God. And they, whether they will hear or refuse to hear, for they are a rebellious house, yet shall they know and realize that there has been a prophet among them. And you, son of man, be not afraid of them, neither be afraid of their words. Though briars and thorns are all around you, and you dwell and sit among the Indians, be not afraid of their words, nor be dismayed at their looks, for they are rebellious. And you shall speak my words to them, and they will hear or refuse to hear, for they are most rebellious. As for you, son of man, what I say to you, be not rebellious like that rebellious house. Open your mouth and eat what I give you. And when I looked, behold, a hand was stretched out to me, and behold, a scroll was in it. And he spread it before me, and it was written within and on the back, and written on it were words of lamentation, mourning, and woe. So, here is the amazing part. Okay, God's telling him this is what's going to happen. I'm sending to this people who are rebellious. And the scroll he gives him is that what he's going to be able to do is going to be lamentation and woe. And he knows that his ministry is going to be about trying to